The rain had been falling since morning, tracing silver lines down the apartment windows and wrapping the city in a quiet hush. Lena Whitmore stood barefoot in the kitchen, watching droplets gather and slide while the kettle hummed behind her. She liked mornings like this, soft, predictable, untouched by disappointment. They made her believe that life could remain gentle if handled carefully. Ethan Cole emerged from the bedroom, still buttoning his shirt, his dark hair slightly damp from a rushed shower. He flashed the easy smile that had once made her heart race without permission. "You're staring at the weather like it owes you something," he teased. "Maybe it does," Lena replied, pouring hot water into 2 mugs. "Rain makes everything honest." Ethan chuckled as he kissed her temple, a gesture so routine it felt stitched into their mornings. For 3 years, they had built a life that appeared steady from the outside. Shared rent, shared groceries, shared plans that stretched confidently into the future. Friends described them as inevitable. Yet lately, Lena had begun noticing small pauses in their rhythm. Ethan guarded his phone more carefully. Some nights he worked late without much explanation. When she asked questions, his answers came smoothly, but something beneath them felt rehearsed. She told herself not to overthink it. Love required trust, and trust required discipline. Still, the silence between his sentences had started to echo. "You'll be late," Lena said gently, nodding toward the clock. "I know." He grabbed his coat. "Big client meeting. Might run long tonight." He hesitated near the door, as if remembering something, then added, "Don't wait up for dinner." It was a harmless sentence, practical even, but it lingered with her after the door shut. At the publishing office, Lena tried to bury her unease beneath manuscripts and deadlines. Words had always been her refuge. Stories behaved logically even when people did not. Adrian Cross leaned against the edge of her cubicle that afternoon, holding 2 coffees. "You look like someone rewrote your favorite ending," he observed. Adrian had joined the company 6 months earlier, bringing with him a quiet steadiness that contrasted with the office's constant buzz. He noticed things others missed, not in an intrusive way, but with patient awareness. "Just tired," Lena said. "You always say that when something's bothering you." She accepted the coffee with a faint smile. "Doi." Every time. Lena stirred the cup without drinking. "Have you ever felt like your life is perfectly fine, but slightly out of tune? Like a piano key that's just a fraction off?" Adrian considered this. "Yes. Usually it means you're hearing something others aren't ready to hear yet." His words unsettled her more than she expected. That evening, Ethan texted that he would be even later than planned. Lena decided to use the time productively. Their apartment needed attention anyway. Laundry waited in uneven piles, and the bathroom shelf had been threatening collapse for weeks. She gathered towels and stepped into the bathroom, letting the familiar scent of lavender cleaner fill the air. Ethan's watch rested near the sink, its screen dark. He almost never removed it unless he was showering, that a thin curl of steam still clung to the mirror. "He must have forgotten it," she murmured. Yes, she folded the damp bath mat. Something unfamiliar caught her eye near the corner of the tub. A small waterproof pouch she had never seen before. It wasn't hidden exactly, but it didn't belong among their usual things either. Curiosity tugged at her. She opened it slowly, expecting spare razor blades or travel soap. Instead, she found a second phone. Lena stared at it, her pulse quickening. The device was powered off, its case unmarked. For a moment, she wondered if it belonged to a friend, if Ethan had simply brought work home. But Ethan worked in finance. He had never mentioned needing another phone. Her reflection in the fogged mirror looked like a stranger, eyes wider, posture rigid. "Don't jump to conclusions," she whispered to herself, though her hands had begun to tremble. She placed the phone back exactly where it had been, aligning it carefully with the tile edge. Then she stepped away as if distance might undo what she had seen. The sound of the front door opening startled her. "I'm home," Ethan called. Too early. She inhaled slowly before walking out to greet him. "You said you'd be late." Meeting got canceled. He loosened his tie, studying her face. "Everything okay?" "Of course," she said, hoping her voice didn't betray the storm gathering inside her. For the rest of the evening, Lena observed him with quiet precision. The way he kept his coat within reach, the swift glance toward the hallway when his primary phone buzzed, the subtle tension in his shoulders when she mentioned reorganizing the bathroom. Later, while they prepared for bed, Ethan slipped into the shower again, claiming the rain had made him feel chilled. Water thundered softly against the tiles. Lena sat on the edge of the mattress, telling herself to stay put, to respect his privacy, to choose trust. But the unanswered questions pressed against her ribs. Before she could reconsider, she rose and returned to the bathroom. Steam blurred the glass door, turning Ethan into nothing more than a silhouette. Her gaze drifted back to the pouch. The shower masked all sound as she retrieved the phone. This time, when she pressed the power button, the screen lit instantly, as if it had been charged in anticipation that a message notification glowed across the display. Last night meant more than you think. No name, only a number. Her breath caught. Another message followed almost immediately, as though the sender sensed attention. When will you tell her? The words seemed to tilt the room in that fragile moment. Lena became aware of something deeper than suspicion. Not proof yet, but the unmistakable fracture of certainty. The life she believed unshakable suddenly felt balanced on glass. She powered the phone off and returned it to the pouch just as the water stopped running. When Ethan stepped out, towel draped casually over his shoulders, he found Lena standing by the window, watching the rain intensify. "You're quiet tonight," he said. "Just listening," she replied. "To what?" "The storm." He joined her, unaware that a different storm had already begun. Lightning flickered across the sky, illuminating the room in brief, stark flashes. For the first time since they met, Lena realized she did not know the full landscape of the man beside her, and as thunder rolled in the distance, one thought settled heavily in her chest. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes it waits, silent, charged, until you're standing close enough to feel everything change. Morning sunlight crept cautiously through the curtains, as if unsure it was welcome after the night's storm. Lena Whitmore had not slept. She lay still beside Ethan Cole, listening to the measured rhythm of his breathing and wondering how someone could appear so peaceful while unknowingly standing at the center of her unraveling trust. The memory of the hidden phone pulsed through her thoughts. When will you tell her? 3 years together, and yet a single sentence had created a distance she could not cross. Ethan stirred and reached for her instinctively, his arms settling around her waist. The gesture, once comforting, now felt complicated, like a familiar song played slightly off-key. "Morning," he murmured. "Morning," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "You're warm," he said sleepily. "Did you turn the heat up?" "No, just couldn't rest much." He opened one eye. "Work stress." She studied his face, searching for cracks in the version of him she thought she knew. If guilt lived there, it hid well, something like that. He kissed her shoulder before getting up. Within minutes, he was moving through his routine with practiced efficiency. Coffee, emails, a quick glance at the news. Yet Lena noticed what she had overlooked before. The way his attention flickered constantly toward his phone, the faint tension whenever it buzzed. "Big day again?" she asked. "Always," he said with a half-smile. That had been a time when she admired his ambition. Now she wondered what else his long hours concealed. After he left, the apartment felt unusually large. Silence gathered in corners, pressing against her composure. She tried to focus on normal tasks, making the bed, watering the plants, but her thoughts circled back to the same question. Who was texting him? By midday, restraint gave way to resolve. She returned to the bathroom. The pouch remained exactly where she had replaced it, which both relieved and unsettled her. Her hands were calmer this time as she powered the device on again. Several messages filled the screen, all from the same unsaved number. "You disappeared after you got home. I hate pretending we're strangers in daylight." Then, one sent just an hour earlier. "I miss you already." Ethan Lena's throat tightened. Seeing his name, there stripped away the last fragile layer of denial that a photo notification appeared beneath the messages. She hesitated before opening IT. IT showed Ethan seated at what looked like a quiet restaurant booth, his expression relaxed in a way she had not seen recently. Unguarded, almost luminous. Across the table, only a woman's hand was visible, resting near his. The intimacy in that small detail spoke louder than any confession. Lena locked the phone and returned it carefully, her movements deliberate despite the tremor beneath them. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. She did not want to grieve something that had not yet been spoken aloud. The office. Words blurred on the page. Adrian Cross noticed immediately. "You're holding that manuscript upside down?" he said gently. She flipped it without looking. "Am I?" Lena, he added quietly, what's going on? For a moment, she considered brushing him off again, but exhaustion eroded her defenses. Can I ask you something? She said, always. If someone you loved was hiding part of their life, would you want to know the truth immediately? Or would you wait until they chose to tell you? Adrian leaned back, reflecting. Truth has a way of surfacing whether we invite it or not. The real question is, can you live peacefully not knowing? She swallowed. I thought I could. And now it feels like standing on a bridge I'm not sure will hold. He studied her with quiet concern, but did not press further. That restraint made her trust him more. That evening, Ethan texted again. Dinner with clients. Don't wait. Lena stared at the message longer than necessary. The lie, once invisible, now seemed obvious. Instead of replying, she opened her laptop and began searching the unfamiliar number from the hidden phone. It took time, but eventually a name surfaced through a social media account. Marissa Hale. The profile picture revealed a poised woman with thoughtful eyes and an effortless smile. Her page was mostly private, but one detail caught Lena's attention. A check-in at a restaurant dated 2 nights earlier. The same place visible in the photo. Her pulse quickened. Without allowing herself to overthink, Lena grabbed her coat and headed out. The restaurant glowed warmly against the cool evening air. She chose a small table near the back, unsure what she hoped to accomplish. Perhaps nothing. Perhaps simply confirming that her intuition had not betrayed her. She scanned the room. Her breath stalled. Ethan sat near the window. Across from him was Marissa. There was no mistaking the familiarity between them. The easy laughter, the way their conversation flowed without effort. At one point, Ethan reached across the table, briefly covering Marissa's hand with his own. The gesture was unmistakably tender. Lena felt neither dramatic anger nor the urge to confront them. Instead, a profound stillness settled over her, as though her heart were quietly reorganizing itself around a new reality. She slipped out before they could notice her. Outside, the air had turned sharp, carrying the promise of another storm. She walked without direction until the city lights blurred. Only one thought repeated in her mind. He didn't just betray me. He built another world and hoped I would never see it. When she finally returned home, Ethan was not yet there. She sat on the couch, staring at the empty space where he usually tossed his keys. Hours later, the lock clicked. Hey, he said softly, surprised to find her awake. I thought you'd be asleep. I was waiting. He froze almost imperceptibly. Everything okay? She met his eyes, searching once more for the man she loved. Ethan, she asked quietly, is there anything you need to tell me? For the first time since she had known him, uncertainty flickered across his face. The silence that followed stretched thin, fragile as glass. And Lena understood, with sudden clarity, that whatever he said next would either save their love or end it. The apartment felt heavier than ever when Olivia Carter returned that evening. The shadows of the dimly lit living room seemed longer, stretching across the floor like reminders of the choices she had made. She set her keys down slowly, aware of the tension that clung to her chest. Ethan Walker was there, sitting on the couch with his laptop open, but the usual polite detachment seemed sharper tonight, almost accusing. Olivia felt a pang of guilt twist inside her, a quiet yet persistent ache she could no longer ignore. Ethan glanced up, offering a strained smile. You're home late, he said, his tone casual, yet it carried a subtle weight, as though he sensed something unspoken. Olivia's fingers trembled slightly as she closed the door behind her. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words lodged in her throat. Instead, she simply nodded, moving to pour herself a glass of water, the liquid trembling slightly in the cup. She realized with sudden clarity that the distance between them was no longer just emotional. It had begun to feel physical, like an invisible barrier she could not cross. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A message from Logan blinked on the screen. I've been thinking about you all day. Olivia stared at the words, feeling the familiar rush of warmth and longing, and simultaneously a stabbing guilt. She knew that her connection with Logan was no longer innocent. The emotional affair had already begun to carve a path through the life she had built. She put the phone down quickly, trying to steady her racing thoughts, but the pull of desire lingered, insistent and unforgiving. Ethan closed his laptop and leaned back, stretching. "Olivia, are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer this time, tinged with concern. She looked at him, at the man she had once loved so completely, and her heart constricted. There had been years of laughter, tenderness, and shared dreams, but they now seemed like echoes from another life. She wanted to tell him the truth, to reveal the storm of emotions that had taken root in her, but fear held her back. The fear of shattering the fragile remnants of their relationship, of facing judgment, of losing the comfort of familiarity. Instead, she forced a small smile. "I'm fine," she murmured, though the words fell hollow even as she spoke them. Ethan nodded, apparently accepting her answer, yet his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. Silence settled over the room, heavy and suffocating, and Olivia felt the weight of her choices pressing down. She thought of Logan, his presence, his attention, the intensity of his gaze, and she understood that her life was no longer balanced between the safety of familiarity and the thrill of desire. The scales had already tipped. Later that night, Olivia found herself standing by the window, staring at the city lights reflected in the rain-slick streets below. Her mind replayed the evenings with Logan, each laugh, each lingering glance, each moment that had chipped away at her resolve. She wondered if she had crossed a line from which there was no return. The excitement that had once felt exhilarating now carried the bitter taste of guilt. She realized that desire, unchecked and unacknowledged, had consequences, emotional consequences, moral consequences, consequences that would reach far beyond herself. The next day, Ethan seemed different, quieter, more introspective. He didn't confront her directly, but Olivia could sense the subtle shifts in his behavior. The way he avoided certain topics, the carefulness in his tone, the way his eyes lingered a little longer before looking away. She felt the invisible thread of suspicion tighten around her chest. Every interaction with him was layered with tension, each word measured, each glance weighted. And with every moment, Olivia felt the growing burden of her secret pressing against her heart that by evening. The emotional tension had reached its peak. Olivia had promised herself she would resist, that she would not allow the allure of Logan to destabilize the life she had built. Yet when her phone buzzed again with Logan's message, "Can we meet? I feel like I need to see you," she felt her resolve crumble. She knew meeting him could escalate everything, that the consequences could be immediate and irreversible, but the pull was irresistible. The emotional intimacy she had found with Logan had created a hunger that she could no longer contain, a yearning that demanded acknowledgement. She walked to the cafe where they had met before, rain falling steadily around her. The city felt alive in a way it hadn't in months, each drop a reminder of the risks she was taking. When she saw Logan waiting by the door, his eyes lighting up at the sight of her, she felt both relief and fear. Relief for the comfort his presence offered, fear for the inevitable fallout of this choice. They spoke softly at first, words barely above a whisper, their conversation layered with unspoken meaning, each sentence carrying weight that neither dared to acknowledge outright. Logan reached out, his hand brushing hers once more, lingering slightly longer than socially necessary. Olivia felt a shiver run through her, a mixture of anticipation and guilt. She knew the boundaries were fragile, yet she allowed herself the brief comfort of the touch. For a moment, the world outside, the responsibilities, the marriage, the obligations, vanished. All that existed was the intensity of connection, the undeniable truth that she had allowed herself to be seen and to feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. Returning home that night, the weight of reality settled on Olivia's shoulders like stone. Ethan was asleep when she entered the apartment, his form curled under the blankets. The room silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Olivia stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching him breathe, feeling the ache of guilt cut through her chest. She had chosen a path of emotional betrayal, one that had begun with longing and attention, but was now perilously close to crossing into something more tangible. She realized that nothing would ever be the same. The life she had once considered secure and predictable was unraveling thread by thread. Logan had awakened a part of her that demanded recognition, yet the consequences of yielding to desire were undeniable. She understood, with painful clarity, that love and fidelity were not merely matters of presence, but of attention, empathy, and engagement. Ethan's absence in the emotional space they once shared had created the void that Logan had filled, and she was now painfully aware of the costs of neglect, of longing, of choices made in the heart rather than in the mind. Olivia sank onto the couch, wrapping herself in a blanket and staring at the rain-streaked windows. She allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection, the weight of her choices pressing down on her, yet mingled with a strange awareness of vitality she hadn't felt in months. She knew the road ahead would demand confrontation, decisions, and perhaps heartbreak. But in that still, reflective silence, she also acknowledged the undeniable truth. She had awakened, and life, as she had known it, was irrevocably changed. The morning light was softer this time, filtered through the gauzy curtains that moved slightly with the breeze. Lena Whitmore sat on the edge of the bed, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long since cooled. Across from her, Ethan Cole watched quietly, his eyes heavy with fatigue and regret. The apartment was still, a fragile bubble separating them from the chaos of the outside world. Neither spoke at first. Words seemed insufficient for the weight of everything unspoken, yet inevitable confrontation demanded clarity. Lena traced the rim of her mug with her thumb, gathering the courage she would need to navigate the truth. "Ethan," she began, voice low but steady, "I need to understand everything. Not excuses, not promises. Everything." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I know, and you deserve it. I'll tell you everything I can remember, every detail, every thought. No more secrets." It was the first honest moment between them in weeks. Lena's heart wavered, hope and fear mingling so tightly she could barely distinguish them. She had always believed that love required trust above all else, and now that trust had to be rebuilt from the fragments of his mistakes. Ethan took a deep breath. It started small, just harmless messages at first, harmless attention. "I didn't think it meant anything." But it grew, Lena. Slowly, I convinced myself I could keep it separate, that it wouldn't hurt us. His voice trembled, but it did. I didn't want it to. Yet here we are. Lena listened, absorbing the words without interruption. Each admission was a small wound and a small relief all at once. The betrayal was tangible, but honesty brought with it a strange clarity. "Why didn't you stop sooner?" she asked softly. "If you realized it was wrong, why not come to me?" "I was afraid," Ethan admitted. "Afraid of losing you. Afraid that if I admitted it, it would all end. So I lied by omission, by silence. And now, I've hurt you worse than anything I could have imagined." Her chest ached, but Lena forced herself to remain steady. She had believed their relationship was unshakable, but she now understood that love alone was insufficient. It required accountability, courage, and willingness to face discomfort. Hours passed in careful dialogue. Ethan explained the circumstances, the emotions that had led him astray, and the steps he had taken, or neglected, to correct them. Lena asked questions she had long feared, each answer revealing both regret and humanity. She realized that his mistakes were not born of malice, but of fear, loneliness, and flawed decision-making. Yet the sting of betrayal remained vivid, unrelenting. By midday, they had moved to the living room, sitting across from each other on the couch. The sunlight cast long, forgiving shadows across the floor, a gentle reminder that time moved forward even when hearts felt trapped. Lena felt exhaustion pressing against her, but also a strange sense of relief. Confronting the truth had been heavier than she expected, yet the act of seeing it laid bare brought clarity. "Can we fix this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's eyes met hers, filled with remorse and hope. "I don't know," he said honestly. but I want to try. I will do whatever it takes. I need to prove that you can trust me again, not with words, but with every action. The sincerity in his tone was undeniable. Lena studied him, searching for any trace of duplicity, but found only exhaustion, regret, and longing. It was not enough to erase the hurt, yet it planted the first seeds of possibility. Later, she stepped out onto the balcony, letting the breeze brush against her face. The city below moved in its steady rhythm. People rushing to appointments, traffic humming along, the world continuing despite the fractures in her own life. She realized that healing would not be instantaneous. Trust, once broken, demanded time, transparency, and consistent effort. Adrian's earlier words returned to her. Truth has a way of surfacing whether we invite it or not. The real question is, can you live peacefully not knowing? Lena understood now that confronting the truth, painful as it was, had been necessary. Peace did not come from ignorance, but from awareness and choice. When Ethan joined her on the balcony, he leaned against the railing, the distance between them measured but no longer tense. I don't expect forgiveness right away, he said quietly. I want to be honest with you from now on. Lena nodded, the wind tangling her hair. I need time, she admitted. I don't know if I can forgive completely, but I need to see your truth in action. That's all I can ask right now. He reached for her hand, their fingers brushing lightly. It was tentative, careful, and yet it carried a weight of intention. No grand gestures, no promises, just a start. A commitment to honesty, accountability, and presence. As evening fell, the city lights flickered on, reflecting in the glass of the balcony. Lena felt a cautious optimism threading through the pain. Love, she realized, was not flawless. It could be betrayed, fractured, and still endure if both hearts were willing to confront their failings. That night, they ate dinner in silence. Yet it was a quiet peace rather than tension. Words had been spoken, truths laid bare. Lena knew the path ahead would be long, filled with moments of doubt, hurt, and careful rebuilding. But she also knew that facing the storm together, acknowledging the fractures, was the only way to understand if their love could survive. Before bed, Lena placed her hand on Ethan's arm. We start tomorrow, she said softly. No secrets, no distractions, just honesty. He nodded, squeezing her hand gently. No matter how long it takes, I'll be here. As they settled under the covers, the night outside was calm, though the storm of recent days lingered in memory. Lena closed her eyes, letting the quiet envelop her. For the first time in weeks, she felt that clarity, painful, fragile, but real, was enough to move forward in that fragile stillness. Lena realized the truth of love. It was neither perfect nor predictable, but it was worth facing the storms to discover if it could endure. And with that thought, she allowed herself to sleep, knowing tomorrow would test both hearts in ways that words alone could never prepare them for.